Good morning. Hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. Before we begin, I want to say that our hearts are with the family of National Guard Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, who was tragically murdered last week here in the district. House Democrats are honoring her memory and continue to pray for the recovery of Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf. This tragedy should never have happened, and will continue to support the investigation on this deeply troubled individual and how they were able to carry out this horrific attack. Now, we'd like to talk about the affordability crisis that is plaguing hardworking families and Americans all over this country. This past week, Americans experienced this sticker shock as they went to their Thanksgiving dinners, as they went to the grocery store, and as they decided to get a jump on buying Christmas presents. In every town, every community, every rural community, the cost of living continues to become more difficult for families to bear. From groceries to clothing to rent and utilities, Americans are seeing these expenses go up with no relief in sight. And not only is there no relief in sight, there's no agenda from House Republicans on how to address this. Donald Trump promised to lower costs on his first day in office. This was one of the many broken promises from this president. The Republican economic policies have only made this worse. On top of the cost of living crisis, Americans are on the brink of losing access to quality and affordable health care if Republicans allow the affordable care tax credits to expire. There is no time to waste. We have a discharge petition that is active, that has Democratic support. That is the only path to deliver the health care certainty and stability that Americans need. We heard during the shutdown from dozens of Republicans who gave public statements saying that they supported the Affordable Care Act tax credits to their constituents. This is their opportunity to make that right. This is their opportunity to stand up for health care, to stand up for their constituents, and to stand up to Speaker Johnson and Donald Trump, who are willing to let these tax credits expire to hurt the American people. This is the only real solution, and Republicans should take it before it's too late. Now I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. I also want to add my sincere condolences to the family of Sarah Beckstrom, the National Guard soldier senselessly killed last week. And I also pray that Andrew Wolf, the other National Guard soldier fighting for his life, pulls through. As Chairman Aguilar has said, we have an affordability crisis. That's one reason Donald Trump is polling at the lowest level ever for a modern-day president at this point in a term, only 36% approval, over 60% disapproval. And for folks who shopped on Black Friday, last Friday, according to Salesforce, average prices across all products increased 7%. And then specifically for household goods, prices increased 24%. Things like furniture, appliances, dining, and decor all skyrocketed. And what is Donald Trump doing? He wants to make sure his Great Gatsby ballroom is as big as it can be. Trump and his rubber stamp Republicans are not focusing on the affordability crisis, and now we have healthcare costs skyrocketing. And if we don't extend the ACA tax credits, it's going to mean that millions of Americans are either going to lose health insurance or pay a lot more for the healthcare premiums. Now I'd like to talk about war crimes. Last week, Secretary Hegseth lied and denied media reports that the U.S. military ordered a second strike on defenseless shipwrecked survivors. Then yesterday, both the White House and Hegseth said actually it was Admiral Bradley who ordered the second strike. I served on active duty as a JAG for 4 years and then an additional 21 years in the reserves. And let me be very clear, killing shipwrecked survivors is a war crime. The Pentagon's own Department of Defense law manual on the law of war literally says that, quote, orders to fire upon the shipwrecked will be clearly illegal. The Department of Justice must conduct an investigation into the war crime and hold all those accountable, including Secretary Hegseth. He allegedly said, quote, kill them all. If the Trump administration does not hold the people accountable, I guarantee you a future administration will do so because there is no statute of limitations for war crimes. And now I have a message for the members of the United States military. Thank you for your service to our great nation. And for those of us who served, we know that we all followed a code of conduct. And part of that code of conduct is to not lie and to accept responsibility. Unfortunately, the head of the Department of Defense, Secretary Hegseth, engaged in dishonorable conduct. He stated on national TV, quote, "I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat." And instead of accepting responsibility for what happened, Hegseth chose to throw Admiral Bradley under the bus. Shame on Pete Hegseth. He is a coward. He must resign. You deserve better.
Questions? Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You and the Vice Chair have spoken about affordability this morning. I'm sure the message you heard from your constituents while you were back home last week. But the White House, after some of the Black Friday numbers came out, said that the record Black Friday spending is an indication that some of the affordability sirens that you all have sounded are a little bit hyperbolic, or a little bit, kind of overblown. What's your reaction to the White House? Kevin Hassett was on the Sunday shows this weekend. What's your message to the White House, who's saying, look at the consumer spending numbers, look at how Americans are continuing to spend money, and that's an indicator that, again, some of what Democrats are saying, is kind of, overblown.
People waiting in line to get a deal doesn't necessarily mean we have a soaring and roaring economy. It means people are looking for a deal. And so the only way we truly know what the economy looks like is, look, our members of Congress are out in our districts, we're out in our community, we see it, we talk to our friends and neighbors, and we hear from them the affordability crisis that they're in. We hear direct stories from them on their healthcare premiums doubling, and getting notices, and having to think about whether they're going to go without health care for the next year if these premium increases stay. That's what we hear. So, but look, in communities all across the country, people, Black Friday is a tradition to go wait in line and to try to get a deal, to try to get ahead on the Christmas shopping. But Kevin Hassett is in the White House. Is just continuing to, perpetuate lies if they use one anecdote as a reason to call for a good economy. One of the things that they can do and that they can control, though, is they can produce real data. They can fund the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They can fund agencies that give us good data so we have an understanding of what is happening with the economy. They don't want to do that. Because they know that the tariffs that they've imposed on Americans are crushing people, and they know that those costs are thousands of dollars that people will face this holiday season as a result of Trump's reckless economic policies.
I find it really funny Republicans are making that argument about Black Friday setting records. The reason it set records is because prices increased. That's why, because people are paying more and getting less. And that's why we see consumer sentiment surveys that shows that consumer sentiment has been rapidly dropping. Polls after polls show that American people know that affordability is a crisis, and they want Trump and Republicans to do something about it instead of focus on stupid things.
Yeah, we'll get to Tyler, but just one last point. None of the bills, Michael, it's a fair question, none of what we're saying on the House floor, comes back to addressing, this issue. If Republicans were so confident that the economy is in the right place, that the American people feel good, they talk in their morning meetings about wanting to address the affordability crisis. They have an opportunity every week here to put up meaningful bills that address that. We don't have that this week. We haven't had that in months, and their only solution is to do whatever the president asks them to do.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. A question for both you, and maybe a little more for Vice Chair Lewis, as you discussed Secretary Hegseth in your opening statement. But is impeachment for the defense secretary, is that something that should be on the table
Yeah, let's not draw the conclusion before we hear the evidence. I appreciate that both Senate majority and minority members, as well as House Armed Services members, Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith, indicated that they want a full accountability to what's happening in Venezuela, especially with the strike, as the vice chair mentioned. That's where this should start. Look, Republicans are not going to impeach Pete Hegseth. We feel he should resign. The vice chair said that multiple times from this podium. I've said he's the most unqualified Secretary of Defense that we've ever had in this country. So that's how we personally feel. But when it comes to the evidence and the accountability and the oversight, let's go through that process. But members of the military, need to tell the truth, as the vice chair said, and we need a full accounting of what happened on that day with that strike in particular, and whether there were crimes that were committed.
I agree with Chairman Aguilar that we need a full accounting to get all the facts first. But we already do know that Secretary Hegseth lied, as did Sean Parnell at the Department of Defense. He also lied. They denied the media reports last week. And then just yesterday, the White House and Hegseth himself confirmed, yeah, a second strike was ordered, and then they threw Admiral Bradley under the bus. That's what happened.
Kyle Maduro with the PBS NewsHour. When it comes to the expiration of the expanded ACA subsidies, how much are you constrained by what can get 60 votes in the Senate? And are you willing to compromise at all on the Democratic discharge petition in order to get a handful of House Republicans on board that you would need to successfully move a discharge petition?
Republicans have said that they want an extension, that they support the Affordable Care Act tax credits. We're giving them an opportunity to do that. That's what this discharge petition is about. As Leader Jeffries has said for months, Democrats will go anywhere and have any discussion with our Republican colleagues about addressing the Affordable Care Act tax credits or the affordability crisis. If Republicans want to have a conversation about solutions, we're all ears. What we're saying is we have a solution. We have a solution with more than 200 supporters. Work with us and let's address this. But right now, the Republican conference is in chaos. They haven't had a healthcare strategy ever. So we're not just going to sit around and wait for them to come up with 1 year, 3-year health savings account, all these things that they don't have consensus among themselves. They're in disarray and disagree with their own leadership on this. And it appears that Donald Trump might even disagree with them. Because before the holiday, he was willing to engage on this reportedly. So what we're saying is, if we have a solution, we have a vehicle, we have an opportunity, let's take this step, and then we can have conversations about what goes on in the Senate. I'm not a Senate expert, and so we're not pretending to be. We're trying to pass legislation out of this chamber.
Open to Congressman Fitzpatrick's framework if the details are released in the next week or so?
Look, we're open to solutions that deliver support for the American people. We have a viable solution with 200 supporters plus. If any member of the Republican Party has a solution with 200 supporters, we're willing to have a conversation. Maeve?
Thank you. Building off of that question, would you guys consider doing a separate discharge petition on a bipartisan basis for a different, proposal like the Fitzpatrick-Suozzi one?
Look, this is the vehicle that has 200 supporters. If there are people that show that they have 200 supporters on a piece of legislation, we're happy to engage and to talk. But what we're saying is this 3-year solution is the easiest, the cleanest, the most viable to move forward where we are now. We understand how to count votes. Catherine Clark is great at that. And so we're going to continue to follow the guidance of our members, but we want real solutions. We don't want talking points and working groups, so we want real solutions to the American people. The clock is ticking. The end of December is coming quickly, and people deserve relief. So that's what our proposal is focused on delivering.
And leading off of that, so are you open to a 2-year extension as opposed to a 3-year with reforms, which is what Suozzi and Fitzpatrick seem to be talking about right now, if they can show you that it can pass the Senate and get signed in the White House?
What we're saying is there's 200 plus Democrats on this discharge petition. If Republicans want to work with us on this, if they want to deliver for the American people, they have a real opportunity to do it. But don't just join a working group and put a press release out to your constituents saying you're willing to engage. Like, sign a discharge petition, force a vote. We're willing to have conversations with anybody, anytime, anywhere on the affordability crisis and specifically these tax credits, but they have had plenty of time. They have known that these tax credits were going to expire for years, and they chose to do nothing about it, including Congressman Fitzpatrick when he supported the Big Ugly Law. And so, Republicans have known that this crisis was coming. They chose to do nothing about it. So if they're truly serious about this, we have a proposal, we have a solution. Let's take that step, and then we can have conversations about what can be passed into law. But it's clear that the president is even open to this before Speaker Johnson got a hold of him. Thank you so much.